What do you say, everybody? Welcome to Bama Insider and the Bama Insider YouTube channel. We're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings. They are being released for the first time tonight, and this is the watch party for it. So as you hang out with us tonight, make sure you get in the comments section. Tell us right now, as we're going to do for you as well, who you think the top four are going to be. Also, like and subscribe. Hit the bell as you hang out. That's a great way of saying, hey, I appreciate the product. Maybe it's just your way of saying roll tide, but we're going to do that tonight as we watch and wait for the 2021 first college football playoff rankings. Let me introduce our crew to you. I'm Mick Gillespie, joined by Kyle Henderson. He's the managing editor of Bama Insider, and Trey Yanity, part of our crew. What's up, guys?
What's up? Happy to be talking some college football playoff rankings. Happy to be here talking college football just in general. This is the first release of the college football playoffs. So feeling good coming off an open week. Looking forward to Alabama, LSU. How about you, Trey?
I'm feeling good. This is exciting. This is the time of the year, we really get to find out how the committee feels, where they put all these teams, because it might be different than the AP poll, might be different than what we think. Got there in the picture. They left their hats at the door. I don't know how seriously we can take that, but they're setting their biases aside to get this right. I'm excited. How are you doing, Mick?
Look, I'm excited too. We all picked our top 4, 5, 6, whatever we threw in there. I think I put like 7 or 8 in there, just because, look, the top 8 give you a criteria of not just this week, but moving forward, who you think is going to be in the college football playoffs. Some of the teams are going to play. So I'm excited to see who you guys put in that mix.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it because I think when you look at the college football playoff picture overall, there's still plenty of college football left to be played. And I think kind of releasing these rankings is a little bit absurd around this time, but it is November and we're getting closer to that time of the year when we start to talk about rat poison and all that fake kind of outside noise for people to read into. But hey, I'm all here for it to talk about the college football playoffs. And I'm not drinking the Bearcat juice. I'll just go out there and say it. I know there's a big group out there that is rah about Cincinnati making it. But look, anytime that you play Navy, and I know don't say about their offense, but they only won by, what was it, 7 points? We have the schedules, but I'm not buying the Bearcat juice.
I got to be that guy. I think I am going to bite into the Bearcat apple, whatever you want to call it here tonight. I believe in this team. And to be honest with you, when I woke up this morning, even I still was a little bit unclear, but really sat down and thought about it for this show. And, I don't think that there's really any other team that deserves, I'm not going to say 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but I think that deserves that 4 spot. At this point, Cincinnati has been at least the 4th best team in the country, and they've built on this for 2 seasons now. I'm riding with the Bearcats. I'm sorry. It's, group of 5 or not. I think you just got to look at it as a football team, and this is one of the best 4 in the country right now. But argue with me in the comments. I want your guys' argument there as well. But yeah, I'm riding with the Bearcats. I don't know.
I'm looking at this right now going, okay, what criteria are they looking at? And I think they're looking at how a team has dominated their opponent. I'm not talking about style points and running up the score, but how they've taken care of business, quality wins, wins over teams that are above 500, and then wins against top 25 teams. So that's going to change each week as we go through. But I'm guessing, Kyle, that's kind of how they've got everything laid out right now. And then we've made our picks, and maybe our picks kind of differ from what's going to come out later tonight.
Yeah, I'm eager to share our picks with you because I know that we sent those into Trey, and Trey has a graphic for us later on that we'll put on the screen. I know the college football playoff rankings, if you're waiting for them to be dropped, they'll be dropped here at 6:00. Usually how it works on ESPN, and you can watch the playoff show and then hop back on with us. Don't feel like you have to stay here the entire time. But they go through 25 through 1, and then with the top 6 kind of looking at the playoff picture. So yeah, we have our picks, and I looked at Mix and I disagreed with Mix, and then I was talking to Trey and I disagreed with Trey. So a lot to talk about.
Let's who wants to go first here, Mick? Why don't we get your picks up on the screen? Get it going. I don't think there's a bad way to go about it at this point. I mean, this is, something that I think will be debated up until that final week, even after that. And, for Alabama, we got a commenter talking about it already. I think that it's important to know that Alabama still controls their own destiny. This team may not be in the top 4 tonight as we look at Mick's top 4 here, but they do control their own destiny. And for Mick, I don't think it includes Alabama here to start.
Yeah, look, this is my top 4 as of today. Now, a lot's going to change between now and the end of the season, right? But I put Georgia in there. That's an easy number one. They've dominated all their opponents. No one's dominated their opponents and won every game like Georgia has, right? I looked at it like this, and I know that the College Football Playoff Committee may judge it differently than I have, but I really weighed the fact that these teams that I had in the top four have not lost a game. And I felt like if you're going into a room and you're trying to be non-biased, you have to look at it and say, hey, the fact that you figured out a way to win needs to be calculated in there. Oklahoma is my number 2 team this week. It doesn't mean that I'm going to stick with Oklahoma forever, but it's one of my teams this week. They beat Texas. Look, they've struggled against Kansas. They haven't always played great football, but I just feel like of the teams that are unbeaten, I had them at number 2. Number 3 is Mel Tucker. We know him from coaching in Tuscaloosa, Michigan State second-year head coach. They beat Michigan last week. They're another undefeated team. Now, they're going to have to play Ohio State. They've got a lot more tough games, including Purdue this week. So who knows what's going to happen there. And then Cincinnati, or as Russ Nixon, who used to be the manager for the Reds, used to tell me, it's Cincinnati. Whether you want to call it Cincinnati or Cincinnati, I give them a lot of respect. They beat a very good Notre Dame team. Like it or not, Notre Dame and Brian Kelly, one of the premier programs in this country. They're not Alabama, but you know what? As far as the next group of teams under the Crimson Tide, I like the way that they do business. He wins a lot of games. Cincinnati went in there and absolutely dominated them. They struggled the last couple of weeks against teams they should beat, but they won the football game. They have the top 25 win. The problem that they're going to run into moving forward is that they don't have a very good schedule coming up. They need SMU to win games. They probably need to play Houston at some point, right? Wouldn't that be in the championship game? They got to have these teams win so that when they play, that those games are more meaningful. Right now, though, Cincinnati moving forward is going to have a lot of trouble with the schedule, so they may not stay in the top 4 for me or for anyone else.
Yeah, do we have a graphic of my picks? And
We do.
Good feedback, Nick. And I think that I'm kind of eager to look at mine. I know I sent those to Trey. Like I said, I think the most important thing, and these are our projections right now. We're going to have ESPN release the official ones, and then we'll kind of react to the overall thoughts. But I think Nick brings up an important point to note is these are the rankings and our projections for today, right? We still have many more weeks of the college football season to go forward and some marquee games, especially in the Big Ten. And I know on our sister YouTube channel, the College Sportsbook, Trey put up a video today talking about the Big 12 and one of the teams that I have in here. And let's first kind of go through my top 4. I have Georgia clearly at the number 1 spot. I think everybody does. And then I have Michigan State. And I think what the Spartans have done overall under Mel Tucker has been quite impressive. And I think the big win against Michigan, and Michigan is a better team that we've seen in the past. I like the fact that they've gone run heavy lately. I think that's been a good look for them. But the Spartans under Mel Tucker, I think they've done a great job. And they have a strong resume. Oklahoma, I have them at 3. I don't like Oklahoma overall. I don't feel that they should be in the playoffs because every single time they get to the playoffs, they underachieve. And I think with the amount of talent that they have and all these Heisman Trophy winners, it always fizzles out in a bad way for the Sooners. But they are undefeated. And one thing that I really don't like about Oklahoma is they're trailing in every single game that they play, right? I mean, you have Caleb Williams, who is a complete baller. I like his game. But everything else, I mean, how can a team with that amount of talent continue to trail Kansas, continue to trade blows with Tulane at the beginning of the season, right? I don't like that. But they are undefeated, and they are coming from a Power 5 conference. So I do like that for today. Now, their remaining games, they have to take on Baylor, they have to play Iowa State, and they have to play Oklahoma State. They could lose each of those games, right? I think Baylor just beat Texas. Iowa State, they have a very good running back. And then Oklahoma State, they could very well beat Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, there for now. Now, at the number 4 spot, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. I do like Alabama's strength of schedule. They were just showing it on ESPN. They played a good schedule. The loss at Texas A&M, I don't think it's that ugly considering the fact that a lot of people forget Texas A&M was a top 5 team at the beginning of the season. Now, yes, everybody's going to play through the roof when they do play Alabama. It's not like they got completely blown out. And I do like what Alabama's done overall from a strength of schedule component. Now, at the back end, do I have my back end picks here? Did we not get those?
No, we just have the top 4 tonight.
Okay. All right. So I'll talk about a couple other teams before I let you go. Now, one team to watch is certainly Oregon. Coming out of the Pac-12, we always say that around this time of year. But remember, Oregon, they did beat Ohio State head-to-head in Columbus. That really stands out to me. And then you have Cincinnati, but I'm not even adding them right now. I think Wake Forest will probably beat Cincinnati. I think Wake Forest probably take it to Cincinnati. Or I'd just like to see that game in general.
It's going to be really interesting.
But I don't think Cincinnati has a resume. A lot of people point to that Notre Dame win. Not impressed by that win over Notre Dame. Now, look, they did a great job from a defensive standpoint. They have some really good players. Jerome Ford, former Alabama running back, but still not believing in the Bearcats.
Yeah, I want to make this argument for him, and it's great to hear you guys' thoughts on this because there's so many different angles to look at the Cincinnati team. But I think what it's going to come down to for them, and I'll just kind of list my top 4 out here. But I think it comes down to that Notre Dame win and that Indiana win. Getting these wins over Power 5 schools when you don't play them in your regular schedule is a big deal. And a Notre Dame team that was in the top 10 this season, I think that might kind of push the needle. And thank you, DeMarco, for getting in here and those kind words. And thank you for all you guys for being here tonight. Let us know who you think is going to be in this top 4. This is going to be a really interesting show to watch here because it's been a crazy year of college football. There hasn't been, a flow. And to even look at this, both of your guys' picks, including Michigan State, that was a team we wouldn't have even considered 7 days ago. So, this is a lot's going to change here. I think a lot's going to, kind of shake and move around. But like I said a minute ago, for Alabama, if you win the rest of your games, you're national champions one way or another. Really going to be interested to see how the committee feels about them, though, at this point.
I had Alabama as the number 5 team. They were the first team of the teams that have one loss to be there. And I could see them easily being a team in the top 4 when the college football rankings come out today. I guess it all depends on how heavily they weigh the loss to Texas A&M, which was a really good game that Alabama didn't play their best, but they didn't win, or do you look at a team and say, look, Michigan State, Kyle, I'm looking at yours right there. Michigan State earned the right to be in the top 4. They're undefeated in their conference. They beat Michigan, which was, not only a top 25 team, but a top 10 team and a big rival. Oklahoma's played a weak schedule when you look at it, but they've won all their games. And then, like you said, Trey, I agree. Notre Dame, that win in South Bend was a big win. And another win was beating Michael Penix and Indiana for Cincinnati. And I just can't discount that where we are right now.
Yeah, I get what you're saying about Cincinnati, and for those of you watching, these are our projections right now, and our projections for today. Now, our projections are going to change every single Tuesday because there's going to be moving and shaking. And right now, if you're watching ESPN, they are releasing the official rankings. We're going to put that screen with the final. We'll have a graphic, right, Trey? And we'll put we'll put the official ones. Yeah. On the screen. Now, this is the first version of the college football playoff rankings. We'll react to it. We'll provide some analysis. Mick put his predictions on. I put mine on right here. And then Trey was talking about it. So that's kind of where we're at. If you're showing up, these aren't the official rankings. We're talking rat. This is our rat poison segment before the actual show.
Exactly.
Well, look, guys, for Alabama, they unfortunately are playing an LSU team that's not good this week. So that's not going to help out a lot. Then they play an Arkansas team who was ranked earlier this season, lost some games. I think they're a quality opponent. That's coming up, not next week, but the week after that. Then they play at Auburn, and then things are going to get tough. But what it comes down to is I think they're going to cruise through these next 3 games. They're going to go to Auburn. That is going to be an absolute war down there. If they figure out a way to win that game, they're not going to have any problem being in the top 4 of this. And then if they beat Georgia, they're in. And if they lose, they're out. The problem that Alabama has, guys, is the way that things set up right now. 2 losses is not going to get you in the top 4.
Do we have Alabama's schedule? Can we put Alabama's schedule? We'll just put it on there while we wait for the official rankings.
For sure.
And Mick, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, and someone said it in the comment box. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that all Alabama has to do is win, and they are in. Now, if they beat Georgia, if they are to beat Georgia, and they're certainly going to be the number one team in the college football playoffs. But this back end schedule, here's a look. Thanks, Trey, for adding that. They got LSU. Did you know? I mean, you know that, Mick, because you covered the college sports book. That Alabama was that 28-point favorite, right? 28.5.
Yep.
Okay, so you got them. Then you have New Mexico State, my beloved Aggies, right, coming over here to keep their program alive. And then you have Arkansas.
There's being sacrificed, Kyle.
Then you have Arkansas, and Brian Robinson is probably going to run for how many, like 300, 3 bills?
That's going to be the game.
Is this
going to
be because they just drop everybody in the box.
Oh my goodness!
And then you have Auburn. Now Auburn, it's a scary team. Okay, Tank Bigsby. And Bo Nix, who knows? Bo Nix, like you can't. The dude, like in this last game, he was unbelievable.
On the road too.
On the road too, and he's beaten Alabama before. Look, I'm not playing in the game. I'm not scared of Bo Nix, but I guarantee you that Alabama's going to have a marquee game plan on both sides of the football to beat Auburn, because Auburn's entire program is looking forward to this game. That's it. Auburn plays a 1-game season. They don't play any other game. They play a 1-game season, and that's to beat Alabama.
Have you guys ever heard of Auburn Jesus?
A couple times, yeah.
We got to get to that one, but the good news is for Alabama and Nick Saban is that over the years they've figured out a way to navigate a very tough schedule, including winning games down at Auburn. All right, so here we go. We got our first list of teams released right now, right? So we got Ole Miss at 16, Mississippi State at 17. How about that? Very interesting. Those two are on a collision course in their rivalry game. And then another SEC team, Kentucky at 18, NC State out of the ACC at 19, and Minnesota, even though they've lost some games, they could possibly get to their championship game if they continue to win in the Big 12 or the Big 10.
Yeah. This has been a really interesting team to follow. And we're looking at 15 through 11 now. These are rankings that kind of make me wonder what they're going to do with the top 4 here, because this is not exactly what I was expecting as a whole. You look at Auburn at 13. Oklahoma State bumps all the way down to 11 there. And Baylor, the team that beat them, up to 12. This is, this is really interesting. BYU in the AP last week was 25. They jumped 10 to 15 now in the first CFP rankings. And A&M, the team that beat Alabama, still at 14 there with the 2 losses.
And taking on Auburn this weekend.
Exactly.
And probably the biggest game of the college football, slate coming up. So that should be a great game. And people are already getting pissed off in the comment box about Auburn and Alabama, right? They're like, Auburn didn't say anything. They're like, we could beat Auburn. Hey, you guys are the fans. I get it, from a fan's perspective. They're like, Georgia blew through Auburn. Well, you saw what Auburn just did to Ole Miss?
Yeah.
And Matt Corral, I'm just saying,
An injured Ole Miss team, though. Alabama played Ole Miss. They were pretty healthy. I mean, they're banged up right now. But Auburn seems to always get those backyard plays with Bo Nix. And they get calls and they get lucky and they get bounces. They should have lost to Georgia State. And, they got that catch that was really an incompletion at the end of the game and then the last play. But give them credit. They always seem to find a way to get lucky, and they've done that again this year, right?
Yeah.
Oklahoma State. Don't forget Baylor at 12. Now, they have a showdown coming up, not this week, but next week with Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
They do, yeah. And, as we get into the top 10 here, this is really interesting to me. Notre Dame at number 10. I think this is a big tell of how the committee feels about Notre Dame, which is a big tell of how they feel about Cincinnati. I think seeing Notre Dame in the top 10 here is I guess they're going to go one by one up the rest of the list here. But I think seeing them is a big sign for what we're going to see in the top 4.
Notre Dame is, look, I've followed this Notre Dame team in every single game. They're on the ropes. It's kind of like the Midwest Oklahoma, seriously. It's like every single game they've been kind of on the ropes. And Cincinnati really took it to them. Dude, this Wake Forest team, have you been following their quarterback? That quarterback is throwing for like 500 yards. Dude, this guy,
that offense as a whole.
So, are they running the ACC?
I guess so. This is crazy. Still a matchup with Clemson to come too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that should be. I'm all in for that one. How is Clemson going to score 2 touchdowns? Right?
I don't think they will.
Yeah, I think they've only scored 20 points once this year.
I think DJ Uiagalelei has one more touchdown than interception on the season. Crazy, and Clemson not making this poll here either. We haven't seen him in the AP in quite some time. I think that Wake Forest is in the top 10 right now. That just doesn't seem real.
Okay.
Yeah, and the most incredible cover since I've been watching college football was Clemson covering against Florida State.
Oh,
on that they were pitching the ball down the field, Florida State, and a fumble turned into a touchdown, and a 9.5 point spread turned into a 10-point victory for Clemson.
Unbelievable.
I'll say this about Notre Dame and Brian Kelly. I think he's one of the best coaches in college football. I put him right up there with anyone. With what he's been able to do at that program. They don't lose a lot. Now, they did lose to Cincinnati, but number 10, they're kind of hanging back there.
Yo, the college football committee is not playing. They just put Oklahoma at 8. Now, thank you. Where's the applause?
Get the applause going. This is insane. Oklahoma, a team that, we were talking about probably in the top 4. Number 8. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, let me chew on this for a second, guys, and not to interrupt, but I'll tell you why. And actually, I think that's a good spot for them, even though I had them way ahead. Is that they haven't led in all of their games. You look at Alabama; they lost to Texas A&M, but they've dominated most of the games that they've played. They've had a margin of victory that hasn't been style points at the end. It's been domination from the beginning to the end. Oklahoma could have lost a lot of games this year. They found a way to win, but obviously, the College Football Playoff Ranking Committee was not buying it. Look at him at number 8. That's very interesting to me. Wake Forest at number 9. I'll tell you what, Alabama's going to be in the top 4. I can tell you that right now.
Jarvis S. coming in hard. He's calling it Joklahoma. Yeah, that was good, man. You know what? And look, you go back to don't rewatch my predictions. I had Oklahoma in the top 4. So, and I'm glad, because this team, I feel that they don't even need to be in the top 10. It's good to see that the playoff committee is recognizing real, right? And you see them there at 8. I can't wait to see. I mean, you're right, man. Alabama's going to be in the top 4.
Well, I think Michigan State now is pretty much a lock as well. And, this is just huge because Alabama controls their own destiny. But Oklahoma was going to maybe be that team that, well, hey, we don't have any losses, even though their strength of schedule isn't quite as good as Michigan now coming in at number 7. I think that's a fair spot for them. But Oklahoma being at 8 shows you the disrespect from the committee and the fact that they could probably win every game this season and still maybe not get in.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that Oklahoma, though, is ranked behind Michigan. That does surprise me a lot. I mean, they're undefeated. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been pretty. And I know the criteria is maybe they don't have the quality wins. They don't have the top 25 wins, and they haven't dominated anybody, but they haven't lost. And Michigan, I watched Michigan last week against Michigan State basically give the ball game away with turnovers and mistakes in the second half and lost. So I'm surprised that Michigan is ahead of an undefeated Oklahoma at this point.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to agree. I mean, like I said, I thought them being undefeated would have them, somewhere within, the top 6, I guess. But it's good to see. And someone put it in the comment box, kind of scrolling up that, it was Jarvis once again saying that Kansas and Tulane playing it close with Oklahoma, that's reflecting on their overall resume, which I think should 100% be the case. And I'm glad to see the committee doing it this year because in the past, I think they've just went off wins and losses, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see where they have Cincinnati because that win against Navy, I keep pointing to that. In the last game that they played, and now they won by a couple of touchdowns, but it wasn't until the later part of the game that they pulled away from that. I just don't think their body of work is that impressive to me. So here comes the top 6 coming soon. We have at the bottom of the screen, you have 10 through 7 right now.
I think now this tells us that we're probably going to see 2 Big Ten teams in the top 4. I think we could easily see them giving Cincinnati the bump and maybe letting Ohio State and Michigan State both enter the playoff there.
Well, they both won't be there in the end, though, because they have to play each other. They will eventually.
They're already in the playoffs, kind of.
Yeah.
Right. One of those teams, unless they cancel each other out and lose some games before that. But this is also what you got to remember, too, is this is also the first rankings. So you're not really getting the political push that the Big Ten always seems to get towards the end of this thing, right? Or the Big 12. A lot of these conferences will kind of push a team towards the front that doesn't belong there. Right now, I don't like Oklahoma being discounted. Even though they didn't win dominantly, they still won, and Michigan being ahead of them, I didn't like that. But I'll tell you what, the fact that they put them back there really gives you an idea that the politics aren't here so far.
Yeah, so far so good for the playoff committee. So let's see. We have the official ranking just came out, and number 2 is Alabama.
Wow, how about
number
that?
2? Number 2.
I mean, you talk about eye test. This is a prime example of why the eye test is so important with the modern system. Look at the teams around the country. You can't tell me there's, more than one team better than Alabama. I think this is a really fair ranking. Love to see it. And again, these two teams are going to have to play each other potentially at the end of the season. So this doesn't necessarily matter, but good to see the committee rolling with the Tide there at number 2.
Well, it comes down to domination too. I mean, look, Alabama's dominated their opponents, even though they lost to Texas A&M, and Georgia's been more dominant than anyone else. So I'm guessing that, and the top 25 wins and the quality wins definitely help Alabama, and they've also had a pretty tough strength of schedule.
Yeah, I want to talk more about kind of the schedules going forward and kind of the quality of work that Alabama's put in. I'm going to step away just for 1 minute, Mick, and I'll be right back.
All right, well, Trey, yeah, I mean, let's kind of get chew on this a little bit. I mean, this is a little bit of a surprise to me to see Alabama at number 2, because when we were making our predictions today, and obviously I had Alabama at number 5, I weighed a loss a lot more heavily than the playoff committee did. And not that I think Alabama is the number 2 team in the country right now. I mean, let's get that straight. Look, I think the only team that's better than Alabama is Georgia. And I think Alabama is the only team in the country that can beat Georgia, and I think if they play that Alabama will beat Georgia. How about that? I think Alabama's got more. They're going to have more trouble going down to Auburn than they are going to have playing Georgia in Atlanta if they get there. I'm going to throw that out there, but I didn't think that the playoff committee would agree with me, and I definitely didn't think Alabama would be number 2.
I didn't either, just because of the way this whole thing works. But we're seeing this committee. I mean, I don't want to call it real. I don't know what the word is for it, but they're just being a little bit more objective this year from what it seems. Oklahoma truly is probably the number 8 seed, maybe number 6 or 7 or somewhere in that range. But you kind of have to make a statement this year that we're not going to rely on, this metric or this statistic or this. We're going to watch the teams play and decide who we think the best 4 teams are. There's been too many times where, numbers have gotten involved or this or that. And I think you need both. You need the computer, you need the human eye test as well. But this season, it looks like they're leaning almost straight eye test as Oregon comes in at number 4 here. Still no Cincinnati, still no Ohio State. Power all the way around. How about that, guys?
I don't like the disrespect that Cincinnati's getting, because they're a good team. I mean, they've got a great quarterback. Desmond Ridder, to me, is someone that should be in contention for the Heisman. They went to Notre Dame. They won that game. They went to Indiana. They won that game. They don't play in a power conference, but and it's showing you right now that the group of 5 has a really, really tough time getting respect. That doesn't mean that Cincinnati's not going to be there. And if Cincinnati played Georgia in the first round, I wonder if it would turn into the game that we saw last year when those two played, and it came down to the last couple plays, Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. But let me point out this real quick. This nice for Metallica right here, Alabama. In the top 4, all former Nick Saban assistants. Okay, so you have Saban, clearly, right? Head coach Alabama. Kirby Smart. You got Mario Cristobal and Mel Tucker.
Yeah, wow.
Saban owns the universe.
It's just insane.
That is pretty funny. So I guess that puts Cincinnati at number 5 or Michigan State. Do we know yet?
Michigan State's at 3 now.
Saban's on the committee. He's the commissioner.
Oh, so Mel Tucker's 3. Okay, I got you. Then
slots in. This is, this is just so interesting, though, that Oregon would be in at 4. And I think you just kind of have to look at Oregon here. This is no disrespect to Cincinnati. This is a good Oregon team. They have a really, really good win. They went on the road and beat Ohio State this year. They have a bad loss, but, Alabama and Oregon are kind of in the same boat. Alabama's just had a little bit better strength of schedule. I think that's why they're number 2. Overall, this is, looking at it now, and there's always more clarity in hindsight, but I think this is fair. Ohio State at 5. Guess Cincinnati really getting the back burner here from the committee. Wow.
God, I'm shocked by that. I think that's the most unpredictable part of this whole thing. I didn't think that they would slide all the way down the 6th. I definitely didn't expect Oregon, who lost to Stanford earlier this year. Stanford is a mediocre team. I don't want to say they're bad, but they're definitely not good. And they did beat Ohio State. But to have them in the top 4 goes back to something that we talked about very early this season, and that's the College Football Playoff Committee will cut their arms off to get a Pac-12 team into the College Football Playoff.
You know what? Yeah, I mean, and if you look about, I mean, you're right, Mick. I mean, Oregon beating Ohio State, that was, I mean, one of the biggest things for them. And here's the official rankings right here. Good job, Trey, getting that up.
Yeah, no doubt. This is, this is something that I don't think any of us would have predicted coming into the day, that Oregon and Michigan State and Alabama all find themselves in the top 4. Obviously, Georgia was your shoe-in, but objectively, I think Georgia, Alabama, you can't miss with putting them at 1 and 2. They've looked like the best teams in the country, but you go down the list, I think it's a coin flip between the next 3, next 4, and obviously Cincinnati getting the short end of the stick here.
It's funny. It always seems to come down to the same teams: Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma. And they're all right there in the mix. I mean, we don't see Oklahoma in here, but they're looming and they're undefeated. And don't count them out. Just because they're not in here right now, don't count them out. If they continue to win, they're going to be in this thing before it's all said and done. And then Michigan State and Ohio State play each other eventually, right? If they keep going the way they're going, they'll cancel one of each other out, right? Alabama plays Georgia if they continue to win. So this is interesting. And that's also good news for Cincinnati, guys. I've kind of taken Cincinnati's calls tonight, but, Cincinnati does have the advantage of a lot of these other teams being scheduled against each other.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Cincinnati is by all means still well in playoff contention. They're going to, if they win the rest of their games, they're in. No doubt either way. And that's, maybe why you see them at 6, because they control their own destiny completely. And, maybe you put a team at 5 or 6 that they don't have a chance to get in. So, that could be part of it too. But got an interesting question for you guys. In the future, do we even look at the AP poll leading up to this anymore? Because obviously, this is a lot different than what we've seen from the AP leading up to this. I think this poll is really starting to kind of change the way that we go about the rankings and everything else. But this is surprising all the way around. I think, like I said, it's good to see the teams that control their own destiny at least be in the position where they can still do so.
Yeah, I think in terms of the AP poll, we just simply stop checking it at this point.
I mean,
why?
Why?
Obviously
doesn't matter.
Yeah, like I get it. Maybe you take a peek at who the coaches have, in the top, but it's all coaches speak. I mean, they're not going to truly show. But the college football playoff rankings is something that, now that we highlight, that's why we're having a show. We're not going to have an AP top 25 show. It's all about the college football playoff show. Can we go maybe like one by one and break down the case? I mean, Georgia, clearly we know what they have to do to win. Maybe we go Alabama, Michigan. Do we have schedules for these teams?
We do. Yeah, we have the remaining schedules all the way down.
Maybe we kind of break it down, talk about some playoff, some scenarios that could happen for these number 5 and number 6 for Alabama itself to reach the playoffs, what they have to do to continue to reach a threshold. And this is this Georgia's schedule? This is Georgia's schedule. So this is pretty easy. I mean, they could sleepwalk through Missouri, Tennessee, going over to Neyland Stadium. They could have a good time in Knoxville. That Charleston Southern game against the Buccaneers, that one is going to be really enticing. Then they play Georgia Tech. So, I mean, my goodness, could that be any easier back-end schedule for the Bulldogs?
I mean, we're looking at this right now, wondering if they're going to eat at Calhoun's at the River when they're in Knoxville after their victory, or if they're going to slide over to Henry's and get a greasy hamburger, right there by Cumberland Avenue. Look, this isn't going to be a contest at all. They'll be hanging out at the Varsity in Atlanta with the big hot dogs after they win that. They could potentially lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game if Alabama makes it. Alabama, I think, is the only team in America that can beat Georgia, and Alabama might not even get to that game.
Yeah, I mean, they really Alabama does control their own destiny, and it's not even hard, but there are some roadblocks along the way for this team before they play Georgia. And we talk about it week in and week out. I'm sure there's somebody on this staff that is preparing for Georgia at this point, but as far as Georgia goes, I think they're probably almost only preparing for a few schools like Alabama, these teams that could really be roadblocks along the way. For Georgia, they're in the spot that Alabama was last season. If they went out like they probably will, that SEC title game might not mean a lot to them, which may, be a really good thing for Alabama, because you might not see Georgia's full playbook in that game if that's the case. But overall, Georgia, it certainly has the upper hand in the country.
All right, let's go to Alabama.
Let's check it out. The
All right,
Tide.
we kind of already went through Alabama's schedule, but still, now that they're the number 2 team, it's only right to talk about Alabama one more time. So let's add it to the screen. So you got LSU, 28-point favorite against the Tigers this coming Saturday. Glad that game wasn't at 11. That was so silly why they said that it might be at 11. Come on. We all know that game wasn't going to be at 11 o'clock. People already knew. People, I mean, there was no way possible. Then they take on the New Mexico State Aggies. As I said earlier, keeping my program alive, keeping them playing football. Then they take on Arkansas. They got to avoid that trap game. Clearly, I think they'll be able to take care of the Razorbacks and KJ Jefferson. And then they play at Auburn. And that was getting people riled up a little bit early in the show because Bo Nix and the fact that Bo Nix was able to beat Alabama as a freshman. We were all at that game. It was thrilling. That's when Jalen Waddle completely balled out of control. Taking on Auburn, I'm curious, Mick, that your early assessment of Auburn, Alabama, many weeks out, what you've seen from Auburn. Did they beat you said they beat a depleted Ole Miss team. Georgia took it to them. What do you think about that game? I mean, there's so much at stake.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll be honest. I mean, I don't like the way that Alabama's played on the road this year. It's not that they couldn't go and beat Auburn down on the plains, but to go down there as an Alabama team when Auburn's having a season like this and win means that Alabama's going to have to play good to great football on the road. I mean, you can even go back and look at national championship teams that Nick Saban has had. 2009, it took Julio Jones and Roy Upchurch to catch that pass at the end of the game-winning drive to win. They've lost some games down there. Who knows what Brian Harson's going to look like, but Bo Nix has beaten Alabama there. That's a tough game. Alabama's going to have to play disciplined football. They're not going to be able to turn it over. They're going to have to keep intensity, and the offensive line is going to have to protect Bryce Young. So that game's going to be tough. I am worried about it. I got to tell you, I've been watching this game for a long, long time, and I know that Auburn just seems to get a lot of breaks. But with that said, Alabama's got more talent, and a lot can happen to Auburn between now and then, including this Saturday at Texas A&M. They lose that game Saturday, and all of a sudden things unravel a little bit for a team that should have lost to Georgia State, and maybe we're not feeling the way that we are going into that one. But it feels like every time there's kind of an even matchup in Auburn, they win, and when Auburn's having a down year and Alabama's good, Auburn ends up like LSU's going to this Saturday.
All right, next team on the screen. Who we got?
Let's move it along now. Why don't we just go in order here? By ranking. Let's get Michigan State.
Michigan State, yeah.
Number 3 now. They go to Purdue next.
Look at that.
Ooh, this is a tough slate, right? So you got Purdue. Who knows what Purdue's capable of? I mean, this team is a lot better than people think. Going to that stadium in West Lafayette. I mean, I've been to West Lafayette. There's like a Dairy Queen in the football stadium. So, people are going to be dialed in for that game for the Boilermakers. Then you got Talia Tagovailoa, Mike Locksley. Think they should probably take it to the Terps at Ohio State. That's theoretically a playoff game in essence, right? And then you have Penn State as well. So if Michigan State is able to win those 4 remaining games and then head on over to Lucas Oil to win the Big Ten championship, Spartans are in, but that's a tough back end schedule. What do you think, Trey?
I like this team a lot. I made that video for our sister channel, The Sportsbook, last week on the Big Ten, and Michigan and Michigan State both are 2 really interesting teams to me. Michigan now not as much, of course, after losing that game, but they control their own destiny. And, this is a Penn State team, an Ohio State team that hasn't looked like their past selves even this season. So, why not? Why not be the team to go run the table and get back in? I think it was maybe 2015 was the last time we saw Michigan State in the playoff, but, this could be the year. Let's check out, I believe Oregon was up next on the list at number 4 there. Oregon's schedule is one that, typically in the Pac-12 isn't too difficult, but this schedule is another just cakewalk here.
What do you think about that, Mick?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I don't see any games on there that they shouldn't win, although Utah has gotten better as the season's progressed. But, this is, it's do you have stuffing or feathers in the pillow? I mean, like this is compared to what we saw for Alabama going down to Auburn and that schedule that Michigan State had where they have to play Penn State and Ohio State and Purdue and even Maryland. Weak sauce, although I got to say Oregon State has been kind of a surprise team this year. Maybe they run into a little trouble with them.
Yeah, I think when I look at this schedule on the back end, I mean, at Washington, sometimes Washington can be a tough draw for these Pac-12 teams. You ever stayed up to watch Pac-12 after dark? It gets wacky. Seriously, like you don't know. Like if you're just flipping around, you can't go to sleep. You're like turn on one of those Pac-12 games, and you're up. Like you've had a Red Bull. It's a lot of scoring. Washington State, there's kind of a lot of drama circulating that program. Utah playing in Utah, now that's a tough game. Utah is very, very dangerous in Salt Lake, and then you take on Oregon State. What's the rivalry? What is it?
Oh, you had to ask. I can't remember. Is it? No, I was going to say Paul Bunyan, but that's the Minnesota deal up there.
Do we know, Mick?
It's the Civil War. They call it the Civil War.
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
All right, War. Nice. Thank you, Mick. Okay, so the Civil War and then the Pac-12 championship. That game's at like 10 a.m. on Fox. So, oh no, I was talking shade, but there it is. It's 8 p.m. on ABC.
Fact checked right there.
Yeah. So fact check myself. Okay, so we got Oregon. So who else? And then throwing our next team.
Yeah, we can go through the next two here. Cincinnati and Ohio State, two teams. That I really still can't believe Cincinnati at least is not in the top four. Let's go to their schedule next. They ended up at number 6, but I believe, they're a little bit more of the hot topic here is they're probably the next team up in line is, Ohio State and Michigan State will play each other. Tulsa is a team that I think a lot of people are still sleeping on to an extent. It's a team that gave Oklahoma troubles, and you look at the rest of the schedule. USF, SMU has been a really good team. Grant Calcaterra, that squad over there. And East Carolina has had some strengths this year as well. But overall, they're playing in a group of 5 schedule, and I think they kind of controlled the rest of the way. What do you guys think?
Look, I think for them, style points matter. I mean, even though they say that style points don't matter, it does for them. That game where they barely got by Navy, even though they didn't fall in the rankings, they should have, right? And then this past week was kind of the same thing again. They struggled against Tulane. They won the game. Tulsa's going to be a tough one for them. UCF stinks. This is what they need. They need SMU and Houston to continue to win and stay in the top 25, and they need to win those games. And they can't lose to East Carolina, who does not have many wins this year. And I mean, look, when you compare this to the other schedules, very weak.
Not quite there.
East Carolina, didn't they beat or they played South Carolina?
They did.
Close,
they played them down to the wire. Yeah, South Carolina wanted a walk-off field goal there. But,
and SMU, they have some sneaky players on their team. They have all those transfers. They're good.
Oh, yeah. They're not
the game is in Cincinnati. They play, down in Tampa, one of my favorite cities. Tulsa. I don't know.
They're ranked. I mean, it's a good team.
Do we have Ohio State's schedule?
We do have Ohio State's schedule. This is the last one that we have here, but this is a team that I think – Michigan State's in that top 3 right now, but I think this is maybe the Big Ten team we see moving on into the college football playoff here. This schedule, kind of difficult down the stretch here, but they do have that head-to-head matchup and, also have to control their own schedule the next week against Michigan on the road. But, they've won that game quite often here in the past. What do you guys think about Ohio State?
Yeah, let me say this. Look, they're going to win out and be in the college football playoff most likely. Yeah. And they have some tough games ahead of them. So they're Nebraska, kind of a surprising. I wouldn't say surprising. It's surprising that Nebraska's not better, but they're a couple plays each week from winning. And if they fire Scott Frost, they're making a mistake because it's not a great job. No one wants to go there. And you know what? They're competitive. They're not good yet, but they're close. We know about Purdue. They're kind of the giant killer. For 1 week, Kyle, one whole week, Iowa was number 2 in the country. And then Purdue blew them out, right? Michigan State, I got nothing but respect for Michigan State. They play old school football. And Jim Harbaugh, look, he's getting a lot more respect than I would give him. But you know what? Their team's up there as well. I think that Ohio State's going to run the table. And if they do, I think they'll win the Big Ten championship. I think they're going to end up making it. I like their offense. They didn't look good against Penn State last week, but you know what? Penn State has a really good defense.
Yeah, I think when you look at this back end schedule for Ohio State, it's I'm not as confident as you, Mick. And look, I like Ohio State and I like their quarterback and I like all the receivers that they have. But man, I just look at that those 2 games at the end of the season before the Big Ten championship. Michigan State, man, Mel Tucker, what he has going on. I mean, the good thing is for Ohio State that the game is in Columbus, but they've lost there before. And Mel Tucker, it seems like he's inspired, probably more so something else than that. And then you have Michigan. Can you imagine Ohio State? They put themselves back in the driver's seat, right? And then Jim Harbaugh comes back and redeems himself, right?
Oh, man.
I don't know.
Won't happen.
Yeah, I don't think it will happen. I mean, like I said earlier in the show, I do like Michigan's run game. I just don't think they have enough firepower to beat Ohio State. So while, Ohio State's probably going to be the favorite in each of these games, Michigan State clearly the game that could trip them up. If Michigan State is able to win that game, then clearly Michigan State, depending on what happens with them, they could be in the driver's seat. But a lot going on in the Big Ten still as we get down the stretch.
Yeah, it's been probably the most fun conference to follow this year. This conference had 4 teams in the top 10 just 2 weeks ago. And, it's going to be really interesting after that November 20th game between State and I guess, the other state in Ohio State. What does it look like for Michigan the rest of the way? Because if Ohio State wins that game, Michigan now controls their own destiny again, because a win over Ohio State would put them back into the playoffs. So, they're going to be the biggest Ohio State fans in the world probably on November 20th, and then they're going to have to turn around, play them as their arch rival. So going to be crazy to follow here. But, overall, it's just been so fun to kind of get to this point, to see Alabama's progression, the rest of the country's progression as well, because this, talk about COVID being crazy and everything else last year, there was some chalkiness about it. This year it's been wide open, and I think it's going to be that way the rest of the season.
All right, guys, as we give our final thoughts here before we close it up, I just want to say this. I'll go first. Look, this is Georgia and everyone else. And how far behind Georgia is everyone else? And I really feel like Alabama is the only team that can beat Georgia. And the question that I have is, will Alabama get that opportunity to play Georgia? That's the question that I have. I look at the Big Ten and I see this. We're looking at it right now. I'm not buying in the Michigan State, Ohio State being on the same caliber as Georgia. We look at the Pac-12 and Oregon. Look, Oregon State beat them last year. Maybe that happens again this year. I don't know. But I'm not buying into any of those teams, right? Oklahoma, they keep barely getting by. So you take everyone out. You look at Georgia. And the only team that I think can stop Georgia is Alabama. And I think that the big question moving forward is is Alabama going to get to that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, and, while you kind of leave everybody with that thought, I want to ask everybody this, Cincinnati, I know everybody, I just took a quick peek on social media. Be careful. There's a lot going on out there. But, let me ask you this. If Alabama plays Cincinnati's schedule, what's their record right now? And what do they finish out? I mean, I'm just going to leave you with that because, people are like, Cincinnati deserves it and stuff like that. Well, I mean, what would Cincinnati's record be if they played Alabama's schedule? That's my final thought. Yeah,
I was going to say that's probably the better question there, because Cincinnati does not hang around if they do play the schedule that Alabama does. And I think that's why the committee put Alabama at number 2. You lose a game every now and then. Texas A&M beat Alabama, but the Tide are going to be just fine. Georgia, obviously, they're at number 1. This, got really crazy after that, but a fun night and, a really, really good idea of how the committee feels.
Well, look, guys, I had a great time. I don't know about you. This was a lot of fun. All of you guys in the comments section, thank you for joining us here and going through the process with us. We're going to do this the entire way. So we'll be back next Tuesday at 6:00 when the next playoff rankings are released. For Trey Yannity and Kyle Henderson, I'm Mick Gillespie. We want to remind all of you guys, first off, that we appreciate you so much for hanging out with us. Like and subscribe, hit the bell. We appreciate you being part of our channel. We'll have a lot more coverage, including tomorrow when these two guys get back together for the score prediction show at 6:00. So you guys can make your predictions with Kyle and Trey tomorrow night. And then I'll be back on Friday with the Bama Insider Tailgate Show. That is a 6:00 show that'll be at Innisfree and Tuscaloosa. But we got all the other press conferences and everything else Bama on here. Andrew Bones got you covered with recruiting. Seems like the Crimson Tide, not only are they dropping bombs on football recruiting, but they're starting to do that with basketball recruiting as well. Lot rolling in Tuscaloosa. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, guys, and Roll Tide.